We're talking today one of my favorite topics, money and
Me
investing. I love talking money and investing, but more importantly, we're talking about a path for independent contractors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is the goal here, is to give our listeners some good financial suggestions, advice on what to do if you're an independent contractor and how to plan for the future. Plan for now and for the future. And, of course, I got Jay Strickland, certified financial planner, here to help me with this because, as you know, I couldn't do it. I couldn't tell you what to do, but Jay does it for a living. Jay, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
No, glad to have you. I appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Jay Strickland. I live in Conway, so pretty close to here, relatively. I've been in the business since 2004, and I work with Legacy Capital Wealth Partners here in Little Rock, across the river.
Gotcha.
And we're what they call an independent advisor, so we're not affiliated with like a Merrill Lynch or a Edward Jones, and we work with we custody clients' accounts, so we hold the client accounts at Charles Schwab, and then we just have that ability to trade on their behalf and administer the accounts on their behalf. That's kind of our relationship with them. And so what we do everything, really. We do everything from investment management to financial planning, which is broad.
Right.
It can be, and I say that because usually, you hear about, these 80-page financial plans that people get, and it's just you glaze over on page 4 or whatever. Those are all good, but usually people don't do 80 pages worth of financial planning in 1 month. They do it over time, whether it's a death in the family or a kid going to college and, changing jobs, retirement. So you kind of do financial planning throughout your whole life. And so that's what we do. We cover basically everything. But we also, we work primarily with high net worth families, just kind of the nature of our business. And then what we do is we also work with 401k plans. Yeah. We do life insurance. We're not attorneys or CPAs, but we work closely with a lot of them. And we have people on staff, advisors. We got a lot of expertise we've got former CPAs, we've got former attorneys. They don't practice anymore. So we've got a lot of resources.
Yeah.
And if, we can't give legal and tax advice, but we know the right questions, and we know where to send people and how to get the answers they need and the solutions they need.
Which is some of the questions, I sent you some of them, to kind of get, and because this, when we're talking independent contractors, it's not just truck drivers. I mean, there's a lot of independent contractors in the world, but it's you almost have to. We try to simplify it.
We do too.
Be as simple as we can to help these guys.
And that's our slogan: is making the complex simple.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
Our tagline.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Family.
I got a wife, 3 kids, 3 boys, 20. I'm going to round up because 2 of them are having birthdays. 1 tomorrow. Oh. Today's Valentine's Day, right? Yeah. I should know that.
You should.
Liz is probably reminding you.
Yes.
So, So you got one turning 20 tomorrow, 22 next March, and then have one that just turned 8. Mm-hmm. So they all 3 still live at home. The 2 oldest are in college, obviously. But
good.
It sounds bad, but it's worse than it sounds. That's what I tell people. It's
It's not bad.
No, it's not bad. So I say that in fun, but no, it's neat to see your kids. Because a lot of kids move as soon as they go to college or whatever. They usually move away, or even in New York, right?
Yeah.
Coal. I like to live vicariously through Cole.
Yeah, me too.
I wanted to do that when I was his age. I just didn't have the courage.
Right.
It's a neat dynamic to see your kids become adults.
Mm-hmm. What's your hobbies?
Man, I've got a few. Believe it or not, I like woodworking. I've got in our garage. We have a 3-car garage, so the third stall is I climate control it. It's not big, but it's fun to get out there and make stuff. And
what do you make?
What
do you make?
Whatever my wife tells me to make.
Examples.
That she needs. No, I'm kidding. No, but I did. I made her it was a big project. I made her a hutch. That was a big project, literally and physically. But all kinds of stuff you can make.
Yeah, I'm amazed by
furniture.
Yeah,
a floor lamp is what I'm working on now.
I'm amazed by woodworking. Really, I mean, you see it.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes some thinking. It takes some precise.
It does, and that measure twice, cut once. That kind of applies to finance and woodworking.
So let's get started with some of this. How to plan, for financial freedom as an independent contractor. Because of course, but I'll put it in perspective here that we got 900 independent contractors, and truck drivers, and they're a lot. It's all they're paid 1099 gross pay, and we're always trying to give them some help to be successful and plan for the future.
Yeah,
to be able to take care of themselves, because when you're self-employed, a lot of times you're not preparing for that. I think,
right.
I think you're just kind of think you're going to work all of the rest of your life and be a truck driver the rest of your life, which some of them do. But I want you to kind of set it up and help them understand that there is a path of getting to this financial freedom, and how's the best way. Where do you start, Jay?
Man, that's a broad question. And before I get into that, I would say there's nothing wrong with working forever.
Yep.
But you don't want it to be because you have to do it.
That's right.
You want it to be because you really like what you're doing. But starting out as a independent contractor is, it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because you're your boss, but the curse is you also your boss, and you're in charge of those decisions financially and whatever. Generally speaking, I would say the key things are to make sure that you keep your finances separate, your personal stuff and your business stuff. Most people, and I don't know how your drivers do it, they probably set up like an LLC or something.
Some of them, a lot of them do.
Yeah, and I think that's smart. It costs a little money on the front end, but it can save you a lot of money. I always recommend, if you're getting into it, at least in the beginning, if it's not too complicated, you might be able to do it on your own, but in the beginning, work with a CPA, because, it's been years, but I know I've had friends that have started businesses and just thought they would just do it on their own, and they did fine, but then they realized when they did hire an accountant, they had missed a lot of deductions that they could have taken or paid too much. And so I always say, it's unless you really know what you're doing on the front end, work with someone that can help you make sure you're maximizing your deductions and paying as little tax as you have to.
Yeah.
Quarterly taxes is a big deal, because you have to set that aside and pay that. So you always you have to, on W-2, it's withheld for you, but when you're 1099, that's a budget item. That's a line item in your expenses, so you can't forget to pay the tax. And then, and you also have to think about your insurance, life insurance, health insurance, things like that. Even disability. That's one thing I think probably the most overlooked in my experience. Insurance is disability insurance, because you think about life insurance. Life insurance is great, and you need it, but in almost every single case, unless you're single and starting out, have no dependents or something like that, you may not immediately. But there's I forget the stat. I think there's a 16 or 18% chance that you might need disability insurance in your lifetime. And so,
we see a bunch of that.
Yes.
And we try to, during orientation even, I try to tell these guys it's something's going to go down. Now, hopefully it's not a full-time disability, but at some point your truck's going to go down and you're going to have to be off a couple months.
Yeah.
Or we've seen that, or your health is going to go sideways, and you're going to be down and can't work. So you want to be prepared. So that's good advice to have that disability insurance.
Yeah, and the key is if you pay, that can work two ways. If you pay for it, then if you ever have to file a claim, that income or that money you get from that is not taxable. If an employer or somebody else pays for it, which usually if you're an independent contractor, you're paying for it out of your own pocket. If you were a W-2 employee working for a company and your company's paying that premium for your disability, then it is taxable. Straight as taxable if you ever have to go and claim with them. So just something to keep in mind. Most contractors are going to be paying for it anyway.
Right.
So, but yeah.
What's some of the first things? I mean, maybe a LLC, get with a tax accountant for sure, know your insurance. But how do they investing is it's kind of a scary term to a lot of people that's never done it. And it's like, well, I'm not smart enough to do that. I can't figure all that out. That's way above me. I don't, and I know that because I used to be there and thinking that I couldn't do it. But you really have to, to invest regularly, you kind of need to know something about it. I mean, how do you?
It helps.
How do you? Instead of just turning it over to Jay and Jay, you take care of me. They really need to know a little bit about it. Investing.
Yeah.
How can you make it where it's not so scary?
Well, that's another big, broad question. We can go a lot of ways with that. I would say to start out, though, whether you have a ton of interest in investing or no interest, or you're really knowledgeable or you have no knowledge, or it's not scary or it is scary, everyone needs to save for retirement. Mm-hmm. And so, most clients that work with us, they either lack the interest or they don't have the time to devote to do it. And then as you're, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but as your assets grow, as your retirement savings grow, things start to get more complex, and then there's more investment opportunities out there to be more diversified and do different things. And so at that point, it makes sense to work with an advisor.
Yep.
Not to say it doesn't from day one, but it's certainly at that point it helps to have trusted advisors, both accountants and financial guys and insurance guys to work with, because the industry changes so much and so quickly. But I would say starting out, there's a couple rules of thumb is be diversified, because, and I would say before I jump into that, knowledge is kind of is the antidote to fear. If you know and understand something, it's less scary. But with that said, I think, a lot of times we'll have clients, not a lot, but especially when markets are volatile, things are going on, if you watch the news, they're really, I'm broadly speaking here, they're wanting people to watch, and they're wanting ad revenue. And so, not that they're being dishonest all the time, but they can talk about markets in a way that makes them scary. Mm-hmm. And so I always tell people, limit your consumption of that, or choose wisely. And one of the blessings and curses of the internet is that there's a lot of information out there. So any kind of financial information, you want to get it from a source that is reputable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's being able to create that investing mindset and wanting to plan for the future the best that you can, because it's not easy for everybody to do. Right. I think first, we probably got ahead of the game, but first they need to limit debt as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because your income can work for you then.
Yes.
And then not be, try to get out of debt as quick and as possible, and that way your income can work for you and planning for the future and investing stuff that you're comfortable with, maybe, that you learn a little bit about. The advisor sure does all that, but I tell you what simplifies it for me is I'll go on to one of those calculators.
Yeah.
And I go to my financial advisor once in a while, and he'll remind me, we'll go to this calculator, and it'll simplify. If I put in, $500 a month, and for 20 years, 30 years, 10 years, whatever, and the average rate of return is 8%, whatever that it's been, over the years, and bam, this is what you have, and you'll be like, That's how compound interest works. That's how making money
Yeah.
over years, and that really simplifies it for me because I can understand putting, just creating that, habit of putting in every month or whatever it is every year.
Yeah. And to that point, when you talk about compounding, the earlier you start, the easier it gets later because of compounding. So, a lot of times when guys are starting out, or guys or girls, right? Yeah. Usually in your early 20s, that's not when you're at your financial peak, right? In life, you're probably eating peanut butter sandwiches
I'm trying to off the subject. Those days. I'm trying to beat in my son's head, Clay. Me and him, he's great. But I try to tell him, son, if you'll just start now, just a little bit. It don't have to. It's not. I'm not asking you to take away from what you're doing because he wants to live now. And I'm like, I understand. I'm not asking you to invest it all. I mean, just a portion to get that habit going.
Yeah.
Son, and you're at 24 years old. I mean, my gosh, if you just started doing some every month.
Yeah.
And that's a really good for because Jay, we do a lot of first time owner operators here.
Yeah.
So they buy a truck. They may come from a company job and they're buying their first truck and they're their first own company.
And those aren't cheap.
And they're not cheap, and it's overwhelming to them a lot of times.
Yeah.
But so that it's something that they got to think about because
Mm-hmm.
I never thought about that. But they go from the W-2 and maybe the 401k and all that stuff into an independent contractor status, and now I've got to learn all this stuff. So that's what a lot of our listeners are doing right now, learning.
Yeah, and one of the things that retirement saving, whether it's in a 401k, IRA, whatever, talking about traditional IRA, not Roth,
right.
but pre-tax savings, those are the best kind of deductions for income you can have because they're above the line. And so dollar for dollar, it reduces your taxable income. Yep. The below the line deductions are great, the things you can expense, but money you're setting aside for retirement pre-tax it's a dollar for dollar reduction on your taxable income.
Yeah.
So you're getting the savings, but your net taxes you're paying is going down proportionally as well because your incomes is lower that you're reporting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of not to get too sidetracked, but there's a lot of debate about whether traditional or Roth.
Yeah.
Which are independent. I guess they can do that on their own, right? They can invest into that.
Yeah. There's several really good options and like
let's talk about that. Let's
talk
about some of the options that they need to look into, maybe that'd be good for an
like I mentioned
contractor.
before, the industry, both insurance and investments, it's always evolving, and so now you've got the ability to, and probably some of your listeners already do this, have a solo 401k. A traditional 401k like Oakley has, where you've got a bunch of W-2 employees in there, and there's a lot of moving parts. Those are the traditional 401ks, like the ones for big corporations. That's not really feasible for a solo employee or solo person entity. Mm-hmm. But now you've got the ability to, through pretty much, I think, any major custodian. I know Schwab and Fidelity for sure. There's many others. You can set up your own 401k plan if it's just you, and that's why they call it a solo.
Okay.
And up until you hit $250,000, it's very simple because you don't have to pay to file 5500s every year or to do the accounting work inside the plan, and so you get the benefits of the limits of the 401k, the savings, without the expense that can come with it.
Okay, so independent contractor can do a solo 401k. Mm-hmm. Now, is that a traditional or Roth? Either one they could do? For a while it used to be traditional only, but now I've seen more and more custodians now will let you do a Roth 401k as well. And what are the limits the same as?
Yeah.
So $23,500
Yep.
a year.
Under 50, and then it jumps up to 30. What is it
31.
this year? 30,000. It jumped up. What is it? I
It's-
wrote it down because
It's
these calendar year
31,000.
changes mess me up. Yep. So, and now there's a new provision. Now, if you're between ages 60 and 63, you can they call it the catch-up contribution. It's up to 11,250
on top of the 23.5.
on top of it. Yes, exactly.
So yeah, you could catch up quick.
You can, yeah, and you might, somebody starting out may say, I'm not going to put that much in there now, but someday you might. That's the goal, right? So if you can do a solo 401k and there's not expenses that you're paying on the front end, sometimes it's easier just to set that up to start out and grow with it, I should say.
At Aero Truck Sales in Springfield, Missouri, they take the hassle out of buying and selling semi-trucks. No matter the manufacturer, the style of cab, or the type of engine under the hood, they can make you a fair offer on your semi-truck with no games or gimmicks. They carry trucks from all the major manufacturers in the trucking industry and perform a thorough inspection of every truck on their lot to ensure safety and quality and give you confidence that you're getting a reliable truck that will last you for years at a price that you can afford. Aero has partnered with Oakley Trucking and the Oakley Podcast for years and are proud to provide our owner-operators with trucks that meet Oakley's qualifications and each owner-operator's specific needs. So whether you're a first-time owner-operator or just looking for a change of scenery, give Keith Wilson a call at 573-216-6047 and let them know you heard it here on the Oakley Podcast.
I was listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember what it was now, but they talking about a SEP for independent contractors. They thought that was the best option for an independent contractor. What do you think about that, or what is that? First of all,
a SEP, it's a simplified employee pension plan. It's just a IRS type of retirement savings account that you can use, kind of like a simple IRA or 401k or a Roth or a traditional IRA. It's designed for small businesses usually. The one thing that you have to factor into that though is, like a 401k will allow for employee and like you can contribute as the employee and then the employer can match, right? And when you're a solo, you are the employer and the employee, so you're matching yourself. But the SEP IRA is employer contribution only, and generally speaking, there's formulas and nuance to it, IRS stuff, but it's 25% of your compensation you can put in as the employer, and so until solo 401ks became more commonplace, SEPs were probably the best option.
Okay.
But now I think, and they could still be a good option, but solo 401ks are worth looking at as well, just because you've got the ability to contribute as an employee and employer both, in my opinion.
Now, say I go in there and I contact somebody, a financial advisor, and I say, hey, I want to open up an account and I want to start a solo 401k. And they go, okay. Of course, you have to contribute some money, whatever, to get started.
Yeah.
But what do you do? Because you need to, what are you going to put it into?
Yeah.
What am I going to invest in actually?
Yeah.
Somebody that doesn't know a whole lot about it, what do you suggest to them, Jay?
Well, I want to come back to one thing before we jump into that.
Okay.
As far as options for saving, if your income limits allow for it, you can also pair one of those with, say, a Roth IRA. So if you had a traditional solo 401k, but you're under the income thresholds, it varies depending on if you're married or single, and they're relatively high. It's your modified adjusted gross income is, I always have to write this down because it changes constantly, but it's 150,000 or less single, 236,000 or less married.
Okay.
So in other words, if you're under those income limits, you can also contribute to a Roth, and then you get,
what's the max on that?
It's 7,000.
Okay.
Under 50, and then it's 8,000. It's an extra 1,000 for
Gotcha.
catch up above that. Yeah, and so you don't get the tax benefit the year you do that with a Roth, but it still grows tax deferred just like a traditional does. And
That's what's that to me.
later it comes out tax free.
Yes.
If you do it right, meaning you don't take it out before 59 and a half. It's been in there 5 years or longer.
Yeah, and both of these, the Solo and the Roth, are 59 and a half. You can't touch it. You can, but it'd be penalty and everything. Both
yes.
of them, both of them are 59
Now,
and a half.
I will say this, some solo 401ks, because it still is a retirement plan, it's lack of a better word, simplified. You still have, depending on what custodian you're using, Schwab, Fidelity, whoever, there could very easily be provisions in there that you can't take it out before 59 and a half.
Yeah.
Unless maybe they allow for hardships, which most of them don't, to my knowledge, but just something to be aware of. A Roth, on the other hand, all your contributions that go in, because it's after tax, the contributions can come back out without penalties or taxes. But I don't recommend that. But sometimes when all else fails and if you have a Roth, that can be kind of a last resort type option if you need cash.
Yeah, and I really like the Roth because it grows. I mean, when you get it out, you don't pay any taxes on it. You've already paid the taxes on it. So that money, and you don't pay the taxes on what the growth of it is. Yeah. The money you've made. Yeah. So that. I
really like Roths, and I know we kind of deviated from the next question.
That's all right.
I like Roths for younger people because generally speaking, that's when you're going to be in your lower income years as far as that your earnings years. And so you don't really need the tax deductions as much as you do when you're making more and you're looking for any tax deduction you can get. And so, and power of compounding, you put money in that Roth when you're younger, may not feel like a lot, but it over the years, you can really see it grow.
Do you know, I heard this too, I don't remember, the Roth, you can, it doesn't have the RMDs.
Correct.
Yeah. What's that stand for? I forget.
Required minimum distribution.
Yeah.
That's where the government says time to pay us.
On your traditional, at some point you got to take so much out. How much is it you have to take out? Just like a percentage
it's
of it?
It's a formula.
Formula, gotcha.
They have the life expectancy table, and there's a number, they call it a factor, that's associated with your age. And so it's designed that as you get older, you have to take a little bit more percentage-wise out per year.
Man, they just going to get you money.
But it starts out, as a rule of thumb, it's the first year you have to do it, it's roughly 4% of the account. So it's not a significant piece, but it's enough to, I'd say, be annoying if you don't need it or you're not already taking money.
Yeah, Roth sounds like the way to go.
Both are great.
I guess in certain situations.
And I always recommend to clients of mine that have two kind of buckets or pools of money. It's great to have some tax-free money, or but also you don't want to, if you're in a higher income bracket when you're working, you why not take that tax deduction if you can, or get an employer match if you're W-2 if you can, if you're in that type of plan. Yeah.
Good suggestions, Jay. So, did you cover what you wanted to go back to the kind of investments? On
you
what
mean
they
different
mutual
types?
funds or
you mean
something
the types of investments?
Yeah, types of investments.
I think that's where you were.
That's where I was headed.
I derailed you. Yeah,
that's good.
So
we're used to getting derailed. We for y'all don't know that me and Jay go to church together, Sunday school class. A lot of times he teaches too, and we get derailed.
We go off the rails.
We go off the rails in Sunday school class, but it's but I think it's fun though, and
it's
good.
Always reverent.
I mean, it's always he always ties it back to the lesson. So
Well, I know it's time to get back on topic when my wife's eyes are rolling out.
When she's like, "Come on, let's
go. Let's move it."
Or the first bell rings.
The first bell. Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah. I mean, is there any kind of for a first-time investor, any kind of investments they need to look for that's, I wouldn't say safe, but easy to understand.
Yeah, and I guess there's a lot of things I would hit on there, and I'll try to do it quickly. There's a Albert Einstein quote where he said at some point in his life, I don't remember when, but said if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, then you probably don't understand it well enough yourself. I don't know if 6 is probably a little bit too low of an age, but maybe a 10-year-old.
No, that works for me.
Yeah. And I say that kind of to be funny, but it is true, and the concept is true in that if you don't understand the investment or you couldn't explain it in plain words, even to yourself, then it's not necessarily a bad investment, but it's probably not right for you because you want to understand and be comfortable with what you're buying and selling and investing in. But starting out, it really don't. I always say don't overcomplicate things because it can get super complex really fast. And with all the different mutual funds and exchange traded funds, and there's what they call leveraged ETFs, exchange traded funds, which is like this. You can buy the market index, but it's double or triple leverage, meaning if the market goes down 1%, that fund could go down 3%.
Oh my!
Yeah, and those are pitfalls because you have to remember this is your saving for retirement, so you don't want to be, a riverboat gambler out there trying to hit stock pick and things like that. So starting out, I always say the cheapest and best way to do it is buy what they call index funds, which is it's just designed to track a broad index, like the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones or the NASDAQ, which is mostly technology stocks. That's generally you can buy one that tracks the bond index. There's a lot of different what I was calling index ETFs.
Okay.
They're really cheap, expense wise, and you get really broad market exposure. And there's always, you hear, and probably everybody is familiar with target date funds, asset allocation funds, which is aggressive or moderate or whatever.
Yeah.
And those are, the norm in a big corporate retirement plan. But you can get those anywhere. You don't have to get those inside a traditional, company 401k. You can buy those types of mutual funds and ETFs on your own.
Okay.
Yeah, and usually, those are, if you kind of know how you need to be invested but don't want to have to look at it on a regular basis, meaning like, every week or month or something like that, those are great because it's kind of a way to put it on autopilot but stay allocated how you should and not get off the rails eventually. So those are good to start out. And as you do grow your accounts and you do get more educated with the markets and things like that, and another rule of thumb is be quick to learn but slow to be influenced, because you hear about if your neighbor is a stock picker and he tells you he made 80% on something last month, well, he's probably not telling you about the things he lost 80% on the same month. And so you want to fight the urge to over concentrate yourself in one or two stocks or Bitcoin or things like that.
Yeah, you want to be, you want it to work for you. You don't want it to consume you.
Right.
And where you're looking at it every week, it needs to be something you got confidence in, that it's got a track record of,
exactly.
This mutual fund or index fund has made this much, percentage over the history of its life. Then I feel good about, hey, sending some money every month and getting that habit of sending it and investing it and moving on. And then I'll look at it every year maybe.
Right.
Because that's what you want. You want to build.
And if you do, as your assets grow and you do want to maybe buy some individual stocks or things like that, I always tell people limit that. Don't take a 40% stake in Tesla in your 401k.
Right.
Limit it maybe to 5% or less, because I've seen that in the past, it can get sideways quickly on people. Yeah. It could be great, but I've more times than not, it can backfire.
And that's probably the thing. A lot of people, you got to have the stomach to ride the roller coaster up and down, because it's going to go up and down.
Yeah.
But you can't. You're in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to mentally know that if it's going down, well, it's going to come back. It's just going to take a little bit, and you got to be able to handle that mentally. I think is a hard part for a lot of people.
Yes, and especially when you are saving for retirement. And I always use this as an example with clients, but during COVID, 2020, the market dropped from the S&P 500, the broad index, from peak to trough in about a 6-week window, dropped 34%.
Was your phone ringing?
Yes. I think some clients were afraid to call because they didn't want to hear what I had to say about that. Because nobody had any answers during COVID, in the beginning anyway. And so, but it was really fast. But if you had opened your statement on January 1st that year, but didn't look at it again till the end of the year, your account, if you were just in the S&P 500, you were up over 10% for the year because it recovered so quickly. And I always, and there's so many studies that show this, but trying to time the market is a giant pitfall.
Yeah.
And getting out of the market when it feels uncomfortable, because the market over 100 years, if you look at it on those big charts that cover the century, it does, you do have corrections and recessions and bear markets, but it always recovers and then some. And it's missing, usually those recoveries start when people least expect it, or they follow a pretty sharp downturn immediately after. And if you have gotten on the sideline, if you're out of the market and you miss that, the long-term results, just like you talked about compounding, it can compound the wrong way.
Yeah.
It can really make an impact on your long-term results if you try to get in and out of the market.
So get in it, stay in it,
Yeah.
ride it out. But when I'm getting ready to retire, I need to be a little more conservative, maybe?
Yes. Well, I say yes, usually yes. Not many. We've got a handful of clients that are in their 90s that are in 100% stocks because, everything is depends, right?
Yeah.
If you've got, depending on what your goals are for your inheritance to your kids or grandkids, or, maybe you've got other, pensions and Social Security and other things, and you've got so much income from your retirement, other outside retirement income sources, maybe you don't need to pull a lot of income from your IRA, and so you can be more growth oriented. So, but generally speaking, yes. But that's not kind of the rule of thumb. And the other thing you don't want to do is get so conservative that your growth doesn't keep up with your income distribution.
I think a lot of people think that when I retire, then my amount's going to start dwindling. I'm going to start taking it down, and that's not what it should be. You should be, I would think, and guy opened my eyes about this, is you're going to make more money after you retire. You're going to continue to make money in investing, with it, because it's going to keep working for you. You're not going to quit.
Yeah.
It's going to keep going.
Yeah.
Whether you're not working or not. I mean, your investments are still working for you.
Exactly. And I'm sure you've talked about this with other people on here before, but the 4% rule, withdrawal rule, that, and this is my opinion, I think that number's a little bit antiquated, just because of how many options there are now and how the industry's evolved to generate more income and different types of things like private credit and private equity and things like that are becoming more and more available to invest in a traditional portfolio. But my rule of thumb is 4 to 6%.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean if you, for whatever reason, get above 4 or 6% withdrawal rate, meaning, I guess to explain that just real quick, that's the percentage of your balance that you're taking out every year. So if you have $1 million, you're pulling $40,000 a year. That's 4%.
Gotcha.
But I say if you're
because that's the rule is that way you never touch the $1 million.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It continues.
Yeah.
To be in there if you're just taking 4% because the market's going to make more than that. So that's the plan.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody knows that, but I want to explain that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I use those kind of as guidelines and guardrails at 4 to 6. Because if you're in that range, for me, that's I'm comfortable with that with my clients for sure. It doesn't mean if you get above 6, like if you're pulling 8% out, it doesn't mean your plan is going to fail or you're going to zero out at some point. But if you stay up there, habitually, because everybody's going to have a roof that they have to replace or you need a new car, and that's expected, right? But you don't want to be spending above those levels for that long. But on the flip side, if you're spending less than 4%, you may not be having enough fun with your retirement money.
Yeah.
And I've had those conversations with clients to say, hey, take that vacation, or that's what you save for your whole life.
That's
and
right.
now you can
enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do. Enjoy retirement.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm David Dunn with Central Arkansas Truck and Trailer. Arkansas's highest rated, locally owned, and family operated heavy and medium duty diesel repair and service. Certified technicians with the latest computer diagnostics to repair everything from Fords to Freightliners. Specializing in suspensions, transmissions, brakes, after-treatment systems, and complete engine rebuilds. Tired of paying high dealership prices with long wait times? Let Central Arkansas Truck and Trailer get your truck back on the road where it belongs.
All right, I got one last question because we need to go. And this is I didn't even put this on your list, but I got to thinking about it. This is true too. I had an owner-operator. One of our owner-operators retire, and I was having a conversation with him, and he, we got off into the retirement and money and what you gonna do, and he said, I'll just be honest with you. I got $100,000, and we got Social Security, and I feel like we're gonna be okay now. And he's probably 70, 72 years old, something like that. So what would you tell somebody that says, hey, I got $100,000, and they were just going to put it in like a CD or something. Yeah. And he's got $100,000 to his name.
Yeah.
And he's got Social Security.
Yeah.
What should he, and he's 72, what should he do with that? What do you think?
Well, everybody's retirement goals and outlook is different, right?
Right.
But in your example, I would say,
he's not wanting to travel the world or anything
Right.
like that. He's pretty,
Yeah.
pretty tame, pretty easy going.
I would say, and I'm going to go a little bit broader on this outside of investments a little bit. One thing, and this happened with my dad. He, as far as estate planning goes, he died without a will. And, when that happens, probate court becomes, becomes a big part of your life for a while. And especially if you have to have an administrator work with that. I'm not saying the administrator's not your friend, but they're doing a job. Yeah. And so everybody needs a will. So I'd say if you haven't done it, do it. And the money it's an expense, but it's much cheaper to have a will, and it really is for the benefit of your spouse and your children and grandchildren is you, right? Yep. But it's you save more than they will spend in probate and dealing with that and cost. So I always say that first. Not everybody needs a trust. Everybody needs a will. Yeah. And generally speaking, and then everybody you've worked your whole life to save. It's your money. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to? What are your goals in retirement? Do you want to travel? If you do, I always tell people if you do, travel earlier in retirement, because I've seen this before with clients where it's kind of the blessing and the curse. They were able to save as much as they did because they were savers, but they couldn't flip the switch mentally to then start spending and enjoying it some. And then things happen. You get sick, you get
old,
you get old. Yeah. And so I always tell people within moderation, enjoy it. Don't just sit on it when you get to retirement.
There's people out there right now going, "That's what I'm talking about, Jay. Let's spend it."
You're gonna get me in trouble. Yeah. Within reason, right?
Within
the 4 to
reason.
6%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah. No. And stay invested. That may look different because you may be more conservative now than you were when you were
So he
younger.
should invest that $100,000 into something he's got confidence in, to where it's making a return of.
Yeah, and great. The best example of that was in 2022 when inflation took off and it peaked at year over year right over 9%.
Right.
Because that is you have to net that out, because if I mean, this is general, but if things cost 9% more now than they did a year ago, well, are you making 9% on your savings and investments to keep up with the increase?
Mm-hmm.
And the difference there is called the real return. So if your investment's made 6%, inflation's 4%, you have what they call a 2% real return.
Mm-hmm.
That means what above and beyond inflation. So that's why it's so important to stay invested in something that's going to give you some kind of competitive returns, but it's appropriate for your risk tolerance. And then I would say the last thing is, and sometimes this can be a misconception, sometimes not, but insurance, it's very likely that some kind of insurance needs to be a part of your permanent plan. Term insurance is great when you're young because it's cheap and it's a lot of coverage, and it protects against if you die and your spouse loses that source of income, or especially if one spouse works, the other one doesn't. But when you get older, some people use that as part of their legacy planning. It's a way to pre-fund an inheritance to your kids, a permanent life insurance policy, because as long as you pay the premiums and keep everything current, that death benefit's going to go to somebody someday. But the other thing to think about too is for a lot of people now is long-term care.
Yeah.
And it's expensive, and not all long-term care facilities and situations are equal.
Yeah.
And if you can be in a private facility, that's better, generally speaking. So for a lot of people, and to have options, or to have options to stay home, in home care. Mm-hmm. But if most of your money's in a 401k or in an IRA or 401k, if you have to pay for that, it's not only are you paying for it out of there, but you're paying taxes on what you're paying for. And so, insurance can play a role there.
Yeah. That's almost a whole nother episode.
It is.
Is that long-term care, because that's going to happen. I mean,
that's most people. I would say, obviously running out of money is a risk.
Yeah.
But that can contribute to it really quickly, because it can snowball if you don't have a way to help offset that expense potentially.
We might just have to get you back on here.
Man, I've
down
had fun.
the road and cover some more of this.
I don't even know how long we've been sitting here. How long has it been?
We want to
About
try
an
to
hour.
cover it. Yeah. So, and we still didn't cover it all. But I just want to give our owner operators a path and some encouragement.
Yeah.
And a lot of them probably are way ahead of us. They could probably sit here and give us a lesson on retirement and on saving money and being prepared. And I'm sure they are, as we've got some really smart guys, smart owner operators out there. But just a little bit of advice that we can help them with and to talk about. I mean, it's stuff you got to think about. Yeah. And the sooner you think about this, the better off you'll be.
Yeah.
So.
And don't get discouraged.
Don't get discouraged.
When the markets go down, it's easy to get discouraged, but
and don't watch TV all the time.
As of today, hopefully they're not watching it while they're driving.
Yeah.
But
right.
But you're probably listening to it to some degree. But I think that's the key. Is it's a marathon and not a sprint. And don't get discouraged, and have goals and plans, and just keep saving, because it may not feel like it now, but later you're going to see it.
Yep.
The results pay off.
That's another thing we can talk about next time. It's not too late to start.
That's right.
Never
It's
too
not.
late to start.
It's not.
Jay, I appreciate you sitting down with me, coming over
man.
here.
Appreciate you
good,
having me.
Yeah,
It's
man.
fun.
Good conversation and everything. So I appreciate our listeners out there. I mean, you guys are awesome. Tuning in every week. We got a new one that comes out every Wednesday. We got some good ones in the pipe. So be sure and check them out and share it with your friends. Let them know about the Oakley Podcast. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next week.